Think for a moment about how the absolute clearest sign of love is found not in his big promises, but in the behaviors he cannot help but repeat. I want you to really pause with that specific thought. Allow that concept to settle and take root not just in your logical mind, but deep within your physical body. The reality is that most women do not struggle with the ability to feel emotions. Rather, they struggle to know whether those feelings are grounded in the truth. You find yourself replaying specific moments in your head on a loop. You study the way he looked at you, the way his hand stayed on yours for a second longer than was needed, or the way his voice dropped that one time, as if his secret slipped out before he could stop it. And then the doubt inevitably starts to haunt you. Was that moment truly special? Or was it just a passing thing? Here is the honest truth that no one ever teaches you early enough in life. Men are fully capable of acting interested, and they can certainly show a lot of charm. They can even create a display of effort on a single occasion. However, men do not repeat emotionally expensive behaviors unless a real attachment is already taking shape. And that is exactly where your understanding begins. Attraction strikes fast, but real attachment is built through the slow power of repetition. The feminine nervous system is frequently pulled in and overwhelmed by sheer intensity. It gets hooked on the fast responses and those deep conversations that stretch well into the late hours of the night. Sudden closeness that feels exciting, powerful, and consuming. But intensity is not commitment. Intensity is chemistry. Repetition is emotional investment. A man may open a door once because he is polite. He may listen once because he is curious. He may show up once because he is free at the time. But when he does it again without being reminded, without being asked, and without being rewarded, something deeper is happening. His subconscious mind is choosing you. And that is the part women are rarely taught to trust. We are trained to study words instead of watching behavior, to seek comfort instead of recognizing patterns, to chase answers instead of allowing them to reveal themselves. Yet psychologically, repetition is one of the strongest signs of emotional bonding. Why? Because the male brain is built for efficiency and saving emotional energy. Men do not repeat what does not matter. Every repeated behavior makes a mental connection stronger. Emotional familiarity starts the bonding process. The nervous system begins to feel safe, and quietly, almost invisibly, the fear of loss begins to act. He thinks, I don't want to lose this. This is why the second time always feels different. The first time creates curiosity. The second time creates emotional weight. You feel it in your body before you understand it in your mind. That calm pull, that steady warmth, that quiet sense of being included in his inner world. And this is where many women accidentally talk themselves out of the truth. You say things like, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe he's just nice. Maybe he does this with everyone. But your intuition isn't reacting to the single act. It's reacting to the pattern forming. It has been said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Repetition is the inner mind speaking. A lesson history has quietly taught us for thousands of years. Real loyalty was never measured by grand speeches. It was measured by who someone returned to. Leaders in the past did not show loyalty with emotion. They returned repeatedly to the same friends even when other options existed. Thinkers did not trust those who gave praise once. They trusted those who came back for advice again and again. In ancient times, a warrior's loyalty wasn't proven through loud vows. It was proven through constant presence, even in silence. Repetition has always been the signal of devotion. Love hasn't changed. Only the way we've been taught to look for it has. Here is a truth that brings back feminine confidence. A man does not emotionally invest on autopilot. Every repeated action costs him something: time, attention, emotional energy, and responsibility. Men naturally avoid emotional cost unless the reward feels meaningful. This is why repeated effort reveals more than any confession. Words are cheap to the male mind. Behavior is expensive. So when he checks in again, moves his schedule again, calms himself again, opens up again, he's not just being nice. He is protecting something he is beginning to value, and value creates attachment. There is a small change point most women miss. The first interaction is just looking around. The second is confirming. Psychologically, the second time says, "This mattered enough to do again." That is when emotional marks begin to form. Artists throughout history returned to the same muse, not because they lacked ideas, but because emotional feelings grow deeper with familiarity. Poets wrote hundreds of lines not because of something new, but because repetition gave meaning, weight. Men bond the same way, not through constant excitement, but through consistent emotional return. If you are used to emotional chaos, this part may confuse you, because real attachment doesn't feel like a drama. It feels settled. That's because your nervous system is starting to relax. Drama gives a rush of energy. Consistency builds a bond of safety, and that bond feels like warmth, emotional grounding, and a quiet sense of "I'm okay here." This is why healthy love can initially feel strange. But strange does not mean wrong. It means you are stepping out of emotional survival mode. It has been noted that where love rules, there is no need for power. Intensity is often about power. Repetition is about presence. And when you begin to understand this, something shifts inside you. You stop questioning his feelings. You stop chasing comfort. You stop needing answers from him because his repetition has already answered you. This is where feminine power returns. Not through control, not through tricks, not through pulling away, but through watching. High-value energy does not demand proof. It recognizes patterns. And when you learn to see repetition clearly, you no longer confuse attention with attachment, intensity with intent, or words with truth. You become calm, steady, and centered. Chosen energy replaces waiting energy. Let this land gently. If he does it once, notice it. If he does it twice, respect the signal. If he does it consistently, his heart is already involved. It shows itself through what is repeated. And once you see that, you don't chase love anymore. You allow it to come forward or fall away. That is not being cold. That is self-worth waking up. And now that you understand why repetition matters, something else begins to move quietly inside you, because a deeper question is forming, whether you realize it yet or not. If repetition is the signal, what exactly are the behaviors a man cannot repeat unless emotional attachment is already taking root? That question is where clarity begins. That question doesn't arrive loudly. It rises quietly, like a realization you didn't plan to have. If repetition is the signal, then which behaviors carry an emotional cost so high that no man repeats them unless his heart is already involved? This is where your focus sharpens. Not through suspicion, not through being too watchful, but through calm observation. Love does not demand attention. It makes room. This is subtle, which is why it's often missed. There is no announcement, no big shift you can point to and say, "This is it." Instead, something moves. His schedule bends. His timing changes. His availability shifts. Not because you asked, not because you pushed, not because you argued for your worth, but because his internal goals shifted. Men are goal-oriented by nature. They build their lives around what matters to them. So when you find yourself naturally included, not squeezed in between tasks, not treated as a convenience, not contacted only when time allows. It means something major has changed. You have moved from an option to a priority. Historically, this is how loyalty was recognized. Ancient travelers changed their paths repeatedly for the same destination, not because it was easiest, but because it was worth it. Warriors returned to the same home again and again, not out of duty but loyalty. Repetition of effort has always signaled devotion. If a man is consistently making space for you, he is already emotionally changing his world. And men do not do that for just anyone. Another behavior men do not repeat without emotional attachment is emotional control around you. This one is deeply psychological. You begin to notice fewer sudden reactions, less fighting back, less emotional mess, not perfection, but effort. He pauses instead of getting angry. He listens instead of pulling away. He softens instead of making things worse. Why? Because emotional attachment makes a person want to manage themselves. A man who does not care will protect his pride. A man who does care will protect the connection. Science shows that when attachment forms, the male brain begins to link the woman with emotional safety. Losing her becomes a threat, so behavior changes. Throughout history, strong G people were known to calm their aggression in the presence of those they loved, not because they were weak, but because love changed their internal state. The meeting of two people is like the contact of two chemicals. If there is a reaction, both are changed. If he is repeatedly choosing emotional maturity around you, that change has already begun. This is not a coincidence. This is investment. And now we arrive at the main behavior. The one men almost never repeat unless attachment is already forming. A man may open up once out of a sudden feeling, out of curiosity, or out of a rare moment of being open. But when he returns to that openness, something different is happening. When he shares fears again, when he talks about past pain again, when he reveals dreams again, when he admits he is unsure again, that is no longer by chance. That is emotional exposure. And emotional exposure is scary for the masculine mind. Men are taught to link being open with a loss of control. So if he repeatedly chooses it with you, his mind has already decided you are safe. Historically, this is shown clearly in letters written during hard times. Men did not repeatedly share fear, longing, or doubt unless emotional bonds were very deep. Being open was risky. It still is, which is why this sign matters more than big gestures, promises, or intensity. Charm looks good, consistency feels good. Openness bonds. This is where many women get lost because we are often taught to look for big gifts, constant texting, or emotional intensity that feels like a movie. But those are performance signs, not bond signs. So when love shows up quietly through repetition, it can feel a bit plain at first. You might even think, is this all? It feels calm, predictable, and steady. And if you are used to emotional chaos, calm can feel like a reason to be suspicious, but drama creates anxiety, not love. Here is the sad irony. Many women reject consistency because it doesn't trigger old emotional habits. Healing love does not feel like a mess, it feels steady. And once you understand that, your standards begin to grow without force. You stop chasing emotional highs, you stop arguing for your worth, you stop over-explaining yourself because now you are watching for something else. Repeated alignment, repeated control, repeated openness. And if those things are not there, you do not argue. You do not try to convince him. You do not wait. You simply step back. That is not being cold. That is emotional strength. Let this settle into your body. Love is not what happens once. Love is what returns. When you learn to read patterns instead of promises, love becomes simple, not always easy, but clear. And clarity is power. Now something else begins to shift. because once you recognize real attachment, love is no longer a mystery. It becomes something you can see. You are no longer asking, "Does he like me?" You are asking something far more powerful. What is he consistently showing me? And once that question becomes your guide, something great happens. You stop chasing clarity. You stop trying to be chosen. You stop giving away your worth to someone else's confusion, because repetition has already told you the truth. And with that truth comes a deeper change, not about him, but about who you become when love no longer feels unsure. That is where the next shift begins. There is a moment, quiet and almost unnoticeable, when you realize something has changed inside you. You are no longer waiting. You're no longer checking your phone with stress in your chest. You are no longer replaying conversations to find a secret meaning. You are no longer asking yourself where you stand, not because he said something to comfort you, but because something deeper has settled, and that is the moment. Eel power returns, not the loud kind, not the kind that begs for attention, the kind that changes how you walk through the world. When love is secure, the nervous system relaxes. This is what emotional peace feels like. For so long, you were taught to link love with intensity, fast thoughts, emotional highs, and uncertainty that kept you on edge. But intensity isn't closeness, it's just excitement. True connection doesn't make your heart race in fear. It calms you down. And when you begin to feel calm instead of worried, steady instead of restless, you might wonder if something is missing. Nothing is missing. What's missing is the chaos. This is the point where many women feel a bit worried. Because chaos has been mistaken for passion, uncertainty has been mistaken for desire, and longing has been mistaken for connection. But psychologically, what's actually happening is very important. You are stepping out of being anxious and into knowing your worth. Your body is no longer mistaking a lack of stability for love. Your mind is no longer confusing longing with real closeness, and because of that, your standards begin to change naturally. Not through force, not through rules, but through seeing things clearly. You no longer chase comfort because your body doesn't crave it anymore. You observe, you listen, you notice what repeats, and this is not emotional distance. This is emotional intelligence. There is a reason that stable love has always been called steady in cultures that understood commitment deeply. Old scholars wrote about love as something that anchored a person rather than something that overwhelmed them. Queens were told to pick partners who brought peace to their inner world instead of chaos. Poets who truly loved did not write about being obsessed. They wrote about belonging. Carl Jung shared this simple truth when he said that creating something new is not done by the mind alone, but by the instinct to play coming from an inner need. When love is genuine, it is not forced. It grows from an inner necessity. This is where the internal change becomes visible to the outside world. You stop trying to prove yourself. You stop giving too much in the hope of being picked. You stop working so hard emotionally to be understood, because a woman who knows her own worth does not bargain for her value. She receives, and receiving is not a weak act. It is selective. It needs judgment, presence, and the bravery to let someone show you who they really are without you stepping in. This is the feminine change that alters everything. When you stop trying to look impressive, love shows itself. When you stop hunting for depth, depth comes to you. When you stop trying to manage the result, the truth becomes clear. Men feel this change right away. It is not because of anything you say, but because your energy is no longer reaching out with emotional hunger. You are no longer leaning forward with need. You are centered, and centered feminine energy is magnetic. Throughout history, the women who inspired true devotion were not the ones who demanded it. They were the ones who were solid within themselves. They did not rush love. They did not explain themselves too much. They did not fight for attention. They let consistency do the talking. They understood something most people never grasp. The woman who can walk away calmly is the woman whose presence is truly valued. This is not because she threatens to leave, but because she knows she is capable of it. That knowledge changes how you love. Now something quiet but strong happens. You no longer need to ask if he loves you, because love has become easy to see. It shows up as emotional stability, steady effort, constant care, and open honesty. If those things are not there, you do not take it personal. Lee, you do not let it hurt your heart. You do not try harder. You simply let go. This is what high-value judgment looks like. Not loud exits or emotional walls, but just quiet clarity. Here is the mystery most people never understand. When you stop chasing love, you become deeply lovable. This is not because you play games or act cold, but because you are no longer moved by fear. Fear pushes away secure connections, while being present invites them in. Your nervous system becomes your guide. If something feels confusing, you move back. If something feels steady, you relax. If something feels wrong, you trust yourself enough to walk away. That trust is everything. Then, one day, you notice something else. Love no longer feels like a wish. It feels like something you allow because love is no longer about being chosen. It is about being in sync. Being in sync does not rush, beg, or perform. It recognizes, let this truth stay with you. You were never meant to talk someone into loving you. You were meant to recognize who already does. The moment you live that truth, your energy changes, your standards go up, your heart rests, you stop waiting, and that is when love stops feeling unsure and starts feeling meant to be. But this is not the end of the change. Once you are no longer chasing love, a deeper question appears, not about him, but about you. Who do you become when you no longer leave yourself behind to find a connection? How do you move when you are no longer scared of losing someone? What does love look like when you are already a whole person? That is where the final layers open up. That is where judgment turns into true self-rule. There is a quiet sadness that shows up when you stop abandoning yourself. It is not the kind that crushes you, but the kind that passes through softly and leaves behind clear sight. It is the sadness of realizing how often you confused uncertainty with deep feelings. It is seeing how many times you stayed where love asked you to be smaller. It is realizing how often you quieted your own gut feeling just to keep a connection alive. This sadness is not a punishment. It is a way to become whole again. When you stop chasing love, you begin to see your past clearly, not with shame, but with kindness. You understand that you are not weak. You are following a pattern. Your body learned early on that love came with being unsure. It learned that closeness had to be earned, and that peace meant boredom while chaos meant passion. This is not your fault. It is just old habits. Habits fade away through awareness rather than force. Carl Jung said that people do not become enlightened by imagining light, but by making the dark parts conscious. This is that moment. It is not loud or dramatic, but deeply honest. You start to notice how differently you act now. You do not rush to fill a silence. You do not over-explain when something feels wrong. You do not chase energy that pulls away. You pause. In that pause, something powerful happens. You give the truth room to show itself. This is where emotional self-rule forms, because self-rule does not mean you no longer want a connection. It means connection is no longer what holds you up. You stop asking how to keep him interested and start asking how to keep him interested, and start asking how you feel when you are with him. You don't look at how intense or exciting it is, but at how calm your body feels. Do you feel grounded? Do you feel free? Do you feel respected, even when no one is talking? These questions change everything, because now love is no longer something you hunt. It is something you weigh and measure. This is not cold, it is wise. Many people misunderstand feminine power. They think it looks like pulling away or acting like you do not care. But true power is being present without being attached. You are open but not stuck on a specific result. You are warm but you do not lose yourself. You are available but you do not compromise your soul. Men feel this right away, not just in their heads, but in their bodies, because you are no longer looking to them to make you feel okay. You are already okay within yourself, and this changes the entire relationship. A man who is ready for love will naturally move toward you, not because you pull him, but because safety is attractive. A man who is not ready will feel revealed. It is not because you demand things, but because your presence highlights his lack of consistency. Here is where clarity is tough but kind. You stop explaining what you need to someone who keeps showing they cannot give it. You stop giving access to your heart without getting the same in return. You stop falling in love with what someone could be because you now understand that potential is not the same as reality. Once this sinks in, your behavior changes without trying. You speak less but more honestly. You listen more to what people do rather than what they say. You move slower, not because you are afraid, but because you are solid. This slowness is not doubt, it is judgment. It creates space for the truth. This is where love becomes simple. It is not always easy, but it is simple. Simplicity means there is no confusion. You no longer need signs or constant proof. You watch what happens over and over, and that repetition tells you everything you need to know. If he shows up steadily, you open up. If he disappears, you do not follow. If he goes back and forth, you do not try to fix him. You let people be who they are and you make your choice. This is not being cold. It is being mature. With this comes a deep peace. It is a peace that does not depend on a text or how fast someone replies, because you are focused on yourself. That is the base of secure love. Re is the truth. Love does not grow where you give yourself away. It grows where self-respect lives. You do not need to announce your rules when your energy already holds them. You do not need to give warnings when you already know when to step back. You do not need a final talk when someone's behavior has already ended things. This is why love starts to feel inevitable. It is not because someone new arrives, but because you have finally arrived for yourself. You are present in your body and your own truth. Now love does not feel like a question mark. It feels like a natural response to being in sync. Something else happens too. You realize your power was never about being chosen. It was about choosing with a clear mind. Clarity does not fight with reality. It accepts it. This leads to the final step. Once you live with clarity, love no longer changes who you are. It makes you more of who you are. There is a moment when you realize love cannot shake you anymore. This is not because you closed your heart, but because your heart is finally anchored. Most people never get here because it means letting go of the familiar hunger and tension that they used to think was deep love. But real depth was never meant to drain you. It was meant to feel like the truth. When you are anchored, love is no longer a test to pass. It is an experience you allow. You no longer ask what you can do to make it work. You ask if it fits who you are now. That one question filters everything. You stop loving effort that ruins your peace. You stop calling nerves butterflies. You stop calling inconsistency mystery. You understand that love that makes you smaller is not love. Love that leaves you confused is not love. Love that makes you ignore your gut is not love. Real love does not make you lose your way. It helps you find it. In this state, your presence alone is enough to judge a situation. You do not have to test people or plan moves. You just watch. Observation shows you everything. If someone is a good fit, they move closer. If they are not steady, the gap becomes clear. If someone is unavailable, you feel it as information rather than rejection. Information is power. This is where love becomes calm. Your body is no longer looking for danger. It is present, and being present is magnetic. People who can love are drawn to that safety. People who cannot love are shown for who they are. You were never meant to capture love. You were meant to recognize it. Love does not need to be hunted or earned. It needs to be matched in effort and presence. When it is not matched, you do not argue. You let go with respect for yourself. This is emotional maturity. It is rare because many confuse being attached with being in love. Attachment is based on fear and asks if the person will stay. Love is based on truth and asks if you are a good match. When you live this way, you stop fearing loss because you are no longer losing yourself to keep someone else. You trust yourself. That trust changes everything. The greatest gift is to become who you truly are. This means being the woman who no longer begs for love because she has already chosen herself. From that place, love becomes clear and simple. You see that the people meant to stay never needed to be talked into it. They stayed because it felt natural. Those who left were not taking anything from you. They were just showing they could not meet you where you are. You stop measuring love by how much you feel and start measuring it by how safe you are to be yourself. You check if your body relaxes or gets tight. The body does not lie. Once you trust it, life gets quieter and more spacious. You do not rush or fear endings because endings are just a way to protect yourself. This is where true radiance comes from. It comes firm. Om being whole. Wholeness is attractive. People feel better around you because you offer stability. Love finds you differently now. Not through drama, but through recognition. Someone sees you and stays again and again. Repetition is the language of real connection. Love reveals itself through quiet, steady actions. When you see this pattern, do not overthink it. Just honor it. When it is missing, do not chase it or make up excuses. Accept what you see. This is self-rule and emotional mastery. From here, love feels like it is meant to happen. You will refuse anything less than a perfect fit. Real alignment always finds its way back to the start. If this felt true to you, type the word repetition in the comments. If you are done with empty promises and ready to trust what you actually see, follow for more. Share this with a woman who still doubts herself, even when the answer is right in front of her.